you mentioned that you've had a couple of Toyota Mirais.
Yes.
So hydrogen fuel cell cars.
Yes.
You don't have them anymore. Was there a
No.
time where you thought this is it? This is the solution?
I wasn't entirely convinced, but again, because I was in a fortunate position, I thought, right, there is this big experiment going on with how we power our cars.
Yeah.
There's this BEV argument, which is obviously winning, but there's the hydrogen fuel cell one, and they've been around a long time. I can have both, and I can compare. And most recently, the two I had at the same time were the Model S Tesla and the new Mirai, which you've driven, actually,
Yes.
Frank, at that time. And I'm aware of all the arguments about the inefficiency of compressing hydrogen and energy transfer and so on. But it's a fascinating bit of tech. It's one of those things, it's a little bit like your mechanical watch thing. You don't necessarily look through the glass back at the movement, but you contemplate it and you think that thing is going ticker, 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 ticker on my wrist. And it's translating the movement of my arm into a regular beat that keeps time. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's very clever.
It's very poetic.
Yeah.
And there was something a bit like that about the hydrogen fuel cell car as you drove along thinking how this is actually working.
I was very taken with that with your Mirai.
I thought it was to drive. It was a wonderful car.
Wonderful thing.
Very, very limousine-like, supremely refined and extremely meticulously made.
And there's, to me, and I know, and it saddens me to hear that Toyota seem to be moving away from it now, but to me, I think you'll know what I mean, there's an essential rightness to the way that car is designed and the technology that it contains. And I still believe, despite everything, that ultimately that's where we're going to end up.
Yes, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if we're really going to decarbonise or whatever else we're going to call it, the whole spectrum of transport, we can't put big lithium-ion batteries in airlines.
No, exactly.
So combustible hydrogen, alternative synthetic fuels, or fuel cell electric motor things with much better storage of the hydrogen. I mean, there's been a great deal of work in effect on the battery electric vehicle because the battery technology has been spurred by things like laptops and mobiles originally, and some rechargeable garden machinery and so on. And of course, the basic infrastructure requirement, a grid, is already in place. So that gives it a huge head start.
Yes.
But I don't know if an equivalent amount of work could be done on hydrogen, and I know people are still working on it, but it's been slightly kicked in the nuts by the disappearance of all the filling stations that were available to cars. Now, I do firmly believe, and I think most of the people in the hydrogen society or community or whatever we call them would agree with me here, is the hydrogen fuel cell is not a route to cleaning up the car. It's a route to cleaning up the whole world that the car can ride on, can piggyback on.
Yeah.
But it really needs to start with things like bus fleets, lorries, shipping.
Shipping, yeah.
But we're in a bit of a vicious circle or a descending spiral of.
But everybody has. I mean, the EV Juggernaut, which and it's not just manufacturers; it's governments have all jumped on board. You can't stop it now.
Very difficult.
But it increasing. We always didn't. We always used to talk of hybrids as a bridging technology. It was the bridge between the internal combustion engine and the EV. To me, increasingly, EVs are looking like another bridging technology.
Yeah.
Because what we know has to be the answer isn't available to us yet. And I think hydrogen has to be the answer. It's the most abundant element in the world, and you combine it with oxygen and you get energy and water.
Yes,
That's
but
it.
it is bloody difficult to manage.
Yes, but
You've simplified it slightly.
yes,
massive.
but as you said, if people had invested the same amount of time and money in doing that with hydrogen that has already been spent in developing, cars with lithium batteries, which are so problematic in their weight, in their use of materials, in everything else, all the problems that we know about that. If the same amount of thought had gone into hydrogen, I just wonder where we'd be now, and I just wonder whether there aren't people who are thinking, well, if we knew then what we know now, we wouldn't be doing this, but we are doing this, so we better get on with it.
Yes, I think it's still worth pursuing. It's for the moment I've had to admit defeat and give up on the Mirai because there's only one place I could fill it, which was very inconveniently situated and wasn't always working, and it no longer worked. When there were a few more stations around, I could use it as my car a lot of the time. But it's interesting what you were saying about hybrids being seen as a bridge. See, I believe when Toyota started working on what became the Prius, which was in, I think, 1968,
Wow.
they were very far-sighted about this.
Yeah.
They liked the idea of an electric motor in a car, but realised that they couldn't put it in by itself, because at that time they would have had lead acid battery, they would have had milk float technology. So they combined it with the engine and came up with this, fill the holes in the efficiency of the petrol engine, in effect, with the electric system and so on. But it did prepare us for that. And then you might be right that the EV is now a sort of, it's a psychological bridge to the idea of driving around in silent, supposedly characterless cars.
Yes.
But that will come from an electric motor probably, but it may not come. The power may not come from a battery.
Sure.
And when the world has, when the young people being born now, who by the time they get their driving license, EVs are all there. They won't have anything to miss because they will never have known what it was like to begin with, and so it'll be completely second nature to them.
Yes.
And I think in that sort of timescale, I don't see that. I mean, there may be, the wondrous breakthrough of battery technology. Somebody may master productionizing solid state and all these sorts of things that we hear about. But unless that happens, I think the time will come when people will look again at it.
I think they will. And of course, we don't have to settle on one. It's not quite like Betamax versus VHS. We can have some battery cars and some hydrogen and some running on synthetic fuels or antimatter or whatever else.
Is that the way the world works? Because of course we all know that we were here at the end of the 19th century, weren't we? When there was steam and there was electric and there was petrol. And petrol was problematic because it was dangerous and it was dirty and it was
difficult to get a hold of.
Difficult to get a hold of everything there. And yet electricity and steam went nowhere and won through. And I can't help thinking that ultimately there will be alternatives, but ultimately people just tend to think, well, that's the right horse, so we're going to back that. Don't know.
Yes, you may be right, but we may have become more enlightened as a result of the example you've just quoted.
Wouldn't that be great?